Hello Internet, I'm Firebolt,
And I'm the Orbiter.
and welcome to Breaking Bollocks, episode 7, I believe.
I've no idea. Probably, yeah.
I think it is episode 7. You can see in the title. Today we are talking about US politics.
And I'm going to learn something.
Before we get into that,
Mm.
I have had a request.
Oh, no. What?
This is from one of my friends at school
Oh.
who watches our videos, one of our loyal fans.
It's not weird, is it?
Close your eyes.
Why?
Close your eyes.
I don't like this. What the fuck?
That was their request. If you're not one of my friends at school who has to deal with this on a daily basis,
We totally understand why.
I do this very annoying thing where I boop people on the nose and call it booping their snoot because I just find that hilarious.
It's fucking weird.
It's a meme.
Is it?
Yes. I just took it too far, like all memes.
Okay, so, yeah, US politics.
Yeah, you said, because when I sort of said, oh, we're going to be recording on this a couple of days ago, you said, oh, I actually know fuck all about that.
Well, yeah, I was
Well,
going
not
to say,
those
I'm
words.
actually going to... This is one of those situations which illustrates perfectly what we were talking about the other week about the youth of today being more politically informed. Because I think I'm actually going to learn something. So you're certainly not going to learn anything from me. Well, you might do, but I'm.
What I
looking
would
forward
learn about would probably be what the perception of politics was in the 80s of US politics.
yeah.
Because I wasn't really aware of the whole Margaret Thatcher relationship with the US.
Well, if I think back to what America kind of meant to me in the 80s, it was like Dukes of Hazzard and the A-Team or nuclear bombs,
Great.
which is a fairly toxic combination.
Speaking of nuclear bombs, well, not really, but kind of. This will probably be weeks old by now, but I just wanted to sort of speak about this in case the world does slightly implode before this goes out. As it must have been a week or two ago by now, a Russian spy who defected to the UK got poisoned in a restaurant, allegedly by Russia. They're not confirming or denying this. Well, Putin's not confirming or denying this. The Kremlin's denying it. And it's kind of blown up a little. I thought originally, because I just saw someone dies in Salisbury due to drugs. Well, not drugs, a substance. And I'm like, oh, that was drugs. And thought nothing of it. And then later it turned out to be this huge spy thing. And it's been called the biggest scare since the Cold War or something.
Just out of interest, can I just ask, from the perception of a generation Y? Y? Are you Y? Or Z? Who are you?
Z.
You're Z, sorry, Z. What am I?
Generation X.
X. Ooh.
Generation Y is actually
Oh,
millennials, but millennials was more popular.
Am I actually literally an X-man?
Well, Generation X just sounds like a band name.
Yeah, how literally do you see this as a major kind of, the world could implode kind of thing?
I didn't take it seriously at first because I was sort of just like, oh, well, it's a spy. They kind of knew the risk when they got into the job. And I was like, yeah, it's sad that they died. And obviously, their daughter died as well, which is sad because she had nothing to do with it. She was just the daughter of a spy.
Yeah, I think they were just still in hospital.
More recently, I think she died.
And what I was going to say, if you want to look that up while I was...
And because this was I think it was polonium, I'm not sure. They basically put this on a table in a restaurant called Zizi's, and about 20 people got whatever it was on them, so they got a bit ill. I'm not sure how many died or how many are in hospital, but it's quite serious stuff. I didn't realise when I originally saw the story.
Thing is, you can't. You've got no idea. Literally, you've
just
got no
type in
idea
Russian spy and it will
who
come out.
is responsible.
Poisoning 23 UK diplomats expelled from Moscow.
Yeah, that's in response to us expelling 23 Russian diplomats from the UK. So it is a tit for tat thing. It's just escalating. But what I was going to say was none of this is actually. I mean, obviously it's worrying, but it's not like it's just like being back in the 80s. It does seem like there are certain people that seemed to be hankering back to get in another Cold War started.
Oh, it's attempted murder. So they didn't actually die, but I wasn't following it that closely, so...
But slightly different...
There was a serious potential for the death of multiple people.
Can I make a very big recommendation that anyone who's interested in sort of Cold War and US-Russia relations, go and see Red Sparrow. I saw that the other day, and it's absolutely brilliant film. Really good.
Mm.
So,
yes, US politics. It's slightly off topic, but along the lines of the Cold War is what I was going for there.
Well, Russia
and it's recent.
US have pledged their backing to the UK on this, haven't they?
They were reluctant, and you can guess why if you're following anything to do with the Mueller investigation. Did any of that mean anything to you?
Vaguely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's to do with Trump being in bed with Putin, isn't it?
Well, not literally. Maybe literally.
Maybe Putin's got a thing for orange hair.
Anyway, off from the homosexual relation between Donald Trump and Putin. Did you just consider that in your head?
No, I was just wondering what... I was just wondering...
Arousing.
No, I was wondering what Putin's reaction would be to seeing you say that.
I mean, yeah. Please don't poison me. That would be weird, though, if you listened to the podcast.
What?
Vladimir Putin.
It would be very
Especially
weird.
Considering that I don't actually think he speaks English.
Having said that, it's surprising how much search engine algorithms and tags can get you seen by people that you wouldn't have thought. There was that instance of a small village near here holding its Independence Day festival, wasn't it? They wrote articles of independence. It was your granddad that was quite involved in it. They did a sort of a mock kind of Independence Day thing, and they wrote articles of independence and everything, and they put a little thing on the website for it. They had a thing at the village hall and what have you. But when he went to look at what traffic had visited the page, apparently some of it was... Where was it from? The Pentagon? Apparently the FBI had visited the page simply because it had Independence Day as one of the tags on the...
I suppose they have to be monitoring for that sort of stuff a lot. I imagine they click straight off it.
Obviously, this video will be tagged with US politics, and it will probably have links to articles about the Russian spy poisoning thing as well.
Yes.
So there's every chance that somebody at the Kremlin might...
I mean, yeah, Russia's in a bit of a weird position because they're kind of suspected for doing a shitload of dodgy stuff in other countries, trying to stir up shit. But it's not quite been confirmed yet. There's a lot of smoke, but they haven't really found.
Again, I mean, this is a lot of our chats are kind of developing some interesting links, because this is again about how other countries see your country from the outside. And
I do like how we're talking about US politics and we've gone Russia, Russia.
It's an interesting, especially if you do go see Red Sparrow. It's an interesting. That's not a spoiler.
It is funny to think how what would have been 30 years ago now, the USSR, which was Russia, basically. I know they had other bits, but were at each other's throats and almost caused World War III.
Have you ever seen the Two Tribes music video?
No.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
But now they're suspected to be colluding.
That was brilliant. They basically had Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev. Was it Gorbachev at the time? I know Gorbachev was involved in all the kind of...
He was kind of hated because he made relations with the West.
Well, exactly, yeah. He kind of advanced the connections. But anyway, the video for Two Tribes basically had Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev and like the spitting image puppet versions of them. But they were in a boxing ring, and they were kind of fighting off against each other. They weren't punching each other, though. They were just giving each other the middle finger and going around in circles, kind of sparring with a middle finger kind of. But yeah, that was the 80s. That was the 80s view of US politics. I don't think you can consider US politics in any particular era, certainly not since not in the last 100 years, without mentioning Russian politics.
Yeah, the whole Cold War thing kind of overshadowed a lot of what was happening in the world.
Interestingly enough, one of the articles I've looked at about America is positing that the US might be a democracy in name, but in effect, it's essentially an oligarchy.
It is
a recent study.
Interesting to see.
We'll put all the links in the description as usual.
Right. I'm going to talk about the Electoral College, something that a lot of people don't know much about. If you want to have a decent explanation of this, there's an excellent video by CGP Grey explaining it all.
I don't know if this is related, but there was a question I wanted to ask you that you might know about, which is about the two-party politics thing. I know the UK can be considered to be two-party politics because...
But there are alternative parties that are given time on
in America,
debates.
are there alternatives to the Democrats and the Republicans, or is it literally just those two parties?
There are two that I think have a couple of representatives, and to give you context of what representatives are, they are very small districts within states. I think the Libertarian Party has a few representatives across the entirety of America. I should probably research this actually, and there's a Green Party as well that some people cite as a third-party candidate. But basically, for the Senate and for the presidency, it's a two-party.
As soon as you say that, the first thing that comes into my head is Star Wars.
I wonder if that's what went through George Lucas's mind when he
I don't know,
ruined the originals.
But don't know. But freedom fighters or terrorists?
What?
Freedom fighters or terrorists? The Jedi. The rebellion against the Empire.
Freedom fighters.
Or terrorists.
No. I mean, yeah, they killed probably several million people, but they were evil, obviously.
They blew up the Death Star.
Yeah, I did watch a college humor video, which is basically Stormtrooper 9/11. Oh, do you remember when the Death Star blew up? Yeah, I remember where I was that day.
Yeah.
My mate got killed in it. Anyway, why are we talking about Star Wars?
US politics.
Great.
Ronald Reagan actually had a program called the Star Wars program.
Oh, recently, well, several weeks ago after this podcast is released, I have to say that after everything I say. Donald Trump proposed Space Force.
I used to listen to a Radio 2 drama called Space Force.
A new
The
branch
science fiction
of
drama. It was brilliant.
military based in space. I'm like, you do know that there's...
Would they have space cadets?
Yes, I would assume.
Where'd you sign up?
And I'm just like, why? And he apparently said it jokingly at first, and then was like, oh no, this is a brilliant idea. I thought it would be the other way around, where it'd be like, oh, here's a brilliant idea, and then it was like, no, that was a fucking stupid idea after spending time with advisors. But Trump just breaks the rules of everything that makes any sense.
He might...
I don't understand how he was elected.
I know, but the problem is, I mean, what happens if these talks that he's going to have with Kim Jong Il, which one is it? Are successful in any way? That's what people will remember. They won't remember all the other bollocks. Be like, oh yeah, he was the first president to... come on, these are...
What?
I was just going to say these are Americans we're talking about. Oh God. I'm such a Brit.
These are Republicans we're talking about.
That's true.
You can call them idiots.
Okay.
If you're a Republican, fuck you. Why did you vote for him? Well, if you were a Republican that voted for him,
Are they like the Americans' version of Tories here?
No, because our Tories are actually much more similar to the Democrats over there. That's how right-wing their system is. There's a concept called the Overton window. Basically, the square of normality in politics.
Yeah.
Say something very left-wing in China. Well, how to phrase this? Basically, when someone does something quite extreme, they shift the Overton window, so slightly less extreme things, but still quite extreme things that would have been considered before are now normal.
Yeah.
So Trump's entirely broken that and shifted that way over to the right, so anything slightly left-wing,
which must be a similar kind of scenario to what happened in Germany in the early 1900s. Late 1800s, early 1900s.
Well, no, because at the time, German politics would have been the Kaiser. Late 1800s, it was the Kaiser. It was only after World War I that even got started.
Right.
Yeah. Enough about Hitler. We keep
We're not
veering-
making comparisons.
No, this is unintentional.
I'm sure Hitler knew what he was doing.
Yes. A lot of people are comparing Donald Trump to notable fascists, and I think they have a point, although he just seems to be doing it
There's
quite accidentally. I don't know if...
that's the thing. Is it genius or just
him
idiocy?
bumbling around doing this stuff, I don't know if it's him trying to lull his opponents into a false sense of security into thinking that he's a complete idiot, or if he's actually planning all this idiocy. Because he seems to have an amazing ability, either by accident or carefully planned out, to distract from any news story.
But it's like Boris Johnson, isn't it? He plays the
just-
bumbling idiot, but he can't possibly be like that and
He's
have got as far in politics as he has.
basically just firing so much news at people that they can't handle the last news story and properly analyze the implications of it.
But I wonder whether in America it's maybe more possible for somebody who is genuinely an idiot to get to the White House.
There is a
Because-
sort of anti-expert sentiment. I think we're finding that a lot as well in politics in general around the world. An anti-expert sentiment, because
Who would benefit from that being the widely held view?
I don't know. People like to feel like they're important, so they want to feel like there's people that are of the same intellectual level of them, and it's weird. I don't understand people sometimes, and that sounds quite out of touch, but it's just true.
It's personality politics, isn't it?
Yes, very much in America, it's personality politics. I think there are extreme limitations on the amount of advertising that you can do in the UK based on politics.
Mm.
Like you
They have
can't-
party political broadcasts, don't
Yes.
they? But their funding
but they have to have it
is
very
closely watched.
Yes, and if it goes out just a little bit, then it's a big deal. I think there was a scandal a while back about the Tories. They might have gone over budget on their campaign,
Yeah, hugely.
and that's actually breaking the law over here.
But nothing was done about it.
No, because people are like, well, they're the government, so what are you going to do? You can't sue the government. Well, you can, but you have to be Richard Branson to do that.
Can I digress? Can I make a planned digression?
Yes.
I saw an interesting thing when I was trying to look up some stuff about US politics the other day. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was a Facebook meme that I saw.
Wow.
But it wasn't when I was deliberately looking for it. But it was a statistic about the number of child deaths from mass shootings in America since 2015, and there were more than the number of soldiers killed in action since 2001. US soldiers on foreign soil.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
Yeah, but what I suddenly thought about that was, hang on, you've got a country where there are more of their own citizens, forgetting the fact that they're kids, but the more of their own citizens being killed by their own citizens on
And
their own soil
I think
than their soldiers that are at war on foreign soil. Does that not kind of
the
meet
reason
the
for
definition
that,
of civil war?
the reason for that comes back to what you were saying about America seeming like a democracy up front, but actually being an oligarchy, because a lot of politicians in America are receiving huge handouts from the NRA, the National Rifle Association. So you've got, and the National Rifle Association, they are basically a corporation because they receive loads of benefits from the rifles sold.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of corporate support though recently, haven't they?
Yep, but I think it was, I can't remember, I think it was Amazon and Apple still haven't pulled support for it. Because the support is basically card-holding members get discounts in certain places.
Mm.
So if you're a member of the NRA, you can get, I don't know, whatever % off on your Amazon purchase. And it just seems so stupid. It's like, why? And I saw a interesting piece on Last Week Tonight on HBO that looked at NRA TV. They actually have their own TV station.
Yeah.
I think several. And a funny program on it was basically this sort of nature documentary style thing, but done in a really dramatic voice, and it said, "Death is the fuel of life."
Okay.
Like,
Is this real?
yes. This is a real thing, because they were like, oh, look, we want to justify hunting and us owning guns, because death is the fuel of life. And they are technically correct, but what the fuck? That's not justification for killing things. And you're not eating the animals that you hunt, I would assume.
I know there are legitimate hunting practices that take place, but
that gets onto a debate about vegetarianism that
huge.
I'm not entirely certain. Have a strong position on.
Not just about that. It's But anyway, how big can hunting be, and as a justification for an entire?
Yeah,
industry?
I mean Germany. We
have hunting here, but it's basically very restricted.
Germany have from what I've seen, this is on a Discord server, so it's not entirely accurate, but basically speaking to someone that lives in Germany, they say that they have a gun control system where if you want a gun, you state the purpose for your use of that gun. Say, if you want it for self-defense, you get a handgun. If you want it for hunting, you get a rifle. You don't get a fucking AR-15, which is a machine gun if you don't know, to shoot Bambi.
Yeah, it does seem excessive.
There's so much corruption in the American system, it's ridiculous. On to the Electoral College, which I was about to explain before you rudely interrupted.
Bill Clinton. He was the best recent president. Sorry, carry on. And they got rid of him because of a blowjob.
Obama was
Obama was
very good.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. But I mean, how can they get a president
impeached? The Electoral College
in a minute,
because this is very important to the current political situation.
Go on then.
Right, basically, how the Electoral College works is there are seats distributed to each state. Every state must have at least 3 seats, and any amount above that is proportional to their population. I think it's roughly per 100,000 people. So a state like California it's over 30 seats, I think. You can actually look at the stats, I can't be arsed right now. The reason so that they had the minimum of 3 seats is so that the big states can't screw over the small states. This was set up this way on purpose. But then you get a problem where you get a state like Wyoming, which has a very low population, I think just over 100,000, which means that a Wyominger's vote counts 3 times more than a Californian's, which end up in this ridiculous situation where you get all the rural states that have quite a small population voting for Republican candidates, apart from Texas, they're a quite big exception from that. All of them, they tend to vote Republican, but because they have this 3-seat minimum, then you get a situation where Hillary Clinton got more votes than Donald Trump, but Donald Trump won. And also because it's a winner-take-all situation, So
from what you've said, then each state gets a party wins a state.
I think
and then they get that number of seats in the
If over
Senate,
half of the districts in a state vote for whatever candidate it is, then all the representatives end up going to that party.
Yeah, so say there's 3 seats in Wyoming, those 3 seats will go to whichever party wins that state.
Say if 2 of those districts voted Republican, 1 of them voted Democrat, all 3 seats would go to the Republicans.
Yeah.
I think they still have houses of representatives where it is accurate to districts, but then you get into a question of first past the post voting, which is stupid. Not recently, actually 8 years ago.
Fairly recent.
The UK had a referendum, I think, actually, on whether it wanted to switch to the AV system of voting. Basically what this is where you rank the candidates and then they get counted in rounds. The lowest candidate's votes get added on in the next round to the candidate that they picked as their second choice. I'm explaining this horribly.
Yeah, that's an annoying referendum, because it's like it didn't get through because people want proportional representation, so they don't vote for AV. But what they don't consider is that actually AV is better than first past the post, so at least it's a step in the right direction.
What actually happened was, surprise, surprise, first past the post works very well for Labour and the Conservatives. So both of them campaigned hard against it. which meant that it didn't go through because voters of Labour and Conservatives make up most of the country, so most of the country voted against AV, alternative voting.
Yeah, but as I say, a lot of people voted against it that would prefer it to first past the post because they didn't want to register support for AV over proportional representation. But proportional representation wasn't on offer.
I didn't know that. That wasn't in what I saw. The thing that I saw this on was it was a Jay Foreman video. He does a series called Politics Unboring. It's very entertaining. I can't remember which specific video it was, but you should watch all of them anyway because they're fun. Anyway, US politics.
Yeah, I don't understand why Bill Clinton got impeached.
The main reason is that he went to court to say that he didn't have an affair.
So it was perjury they got
Yes.
him for, really, but basically. Yeah.
It's a technical thing, but it is what it was in the end. That's what they got him for, because he didn't want to have to admit to having an affair. He wanted to prove to Hillary that he didn't.
Surely Trump has done something, perjured himself somehow in
He's
any
not
of these.
been to the courts yet. He said that he would, but everything he says is unreliable and flippant, so it's kind of hard to get anything from it. And what he says isn't concrete evidence. They are seeing a lot of things that, like, yes, this is a massive coincidence. Everyone around you, many of your campaign advisors and campaign managers are tied up in this. And I think that I saw this funny thing. This was also on Last Week Tonight, where this guy that had been wrapped up in all of this, I believe it was some advisor in his campaign, he'd been told that he would have to testify. It says, I'm not going to do it. What are you going to do? Arrest me? And then we're like, yes, they are going to arrest you. And then at some point during this huge spiel of, they're not going to arrest me, he just has this face of recognition. It's like, holy shit, they're going to arrest me. And yeah, there's a lot of suspicion around the whole collusion, because the main thing that they're looking for, the technical thing, because collusion's kind of a difficult thing to prove, but he fired the director of the FBI, James Comey, and that would be considered obstruction of justice if they can find stuff that's saying that there wasn't some other reason. That could be considered obstruction of justice because the FBI at the time was investigating collusion.
But you've got to prove that that was the reason behind the firing. Yeah. I was going to say, the thing that I'm quite interested to see over the next few years, decades, whatever, is America has got quite comfortable, especially since the fall of the USSR, basically being the big world superpower. Before that, it was between them and Russia. Although I don't understand really why they saw Russia as a threat in anything other than a nuclear sense.
Well,
Because
ideologically. There were two economic ideologies, communism and capitalism, and they were like, well, we have to fight for capitalism. And throughout the Cold War, supported all the people that were supporting capitalism to fight against communists.
Maybe it's because I was born far enough into it to just see capitalism as the natural order of the Western world.
I did actually see something, I can't remember what it was on recently. In Vietnam, they call the Vietnam War a different thing, because obviously they wouldn't just say, oh, it's the Vietnam War. There have been several wars in Vietnam. They either call it the American War, or sometimes it's called the Resistance War, because America lost that war.
Yeah.
And that means that, I'm not sure how communist Vietnam is now, but that means that they were resisting capitalism.
It's a weird one, that, because if I'd be pretty sure that America would claim that they didn't lose it. It was a draw, a stalemate kind of thing.
They didn't succeed.
What was it they were trying to achieve?
Promoting their ideology.
So they were invading another country to promote their own ideology over that country's existing one.
Well, to promote it over what the USSR was doing there.
It's all bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a lot about that, because there's this website that does a political compass. You can take a test on it and it tells you where you stand on it. Pretty much all of American politics falls into a very specific section of that. Republicans and Democrats are like a square over from each other, and a square is very minor. Like they're very close in ideology sense, and I, on that compass, fall into the left bottom corner, which is left libertarianism, basically where liberal socialism lies, and it's very close to anarcho-socialism, which I understand doesn't always realistically work, so it depends on how idealistic I'm feeling at the time I take the test, and the more idealistic I feel, the more into that very bottom left corner I am.
Politics, to me, is such an abstract concept.
Most of Western politics is in the top right corner.
Yeah.
Which is where conservatives lie, and
I think the problem is, I suppose, when you get into sort of governance, because I mean, like our ideology as normal everyday people is just be nice to folk and do the right thing and all that. But when you get into when we're playing that democracy game, I know that was just a game, but when you get into issues and how they affect other things and how the funding of one particular thing affects something else, and it seems that it gets to a point where you have to kind of take on an abstract view, like, am I going to be right wing or left wing or socialist or capitalist or whatever? It just seems to be really removed from reality, but it's a way of organizing society. Really.
It's a lot of the way of how they advertise themselves as well.
Yeah, which is propaganda, really, isn't it?
Well, sometimes it's not actually the government, it's who's hoping to be in the government. So
yeah. Propaganda's sort of when something's against something normally, isn't it, rather than for
what?
Well, propaganda would usually be something that you'd use against an enemy rather than
no, because there was a lot of propaganda that was making the Soviet Union look good, a lot of propaganda that was designed to make World War I look good or World War II look good, which can very well be described as propaganda, despite it being produced by Western countries.
While I don't relish the thought of being in a world where all-out war is a constant threat, like it was in the 80s and during the Cold War time, at the same time, I think it's about balance. You can't have a superpower that's so right-wing and not have anything to challenge that, not to outweigh it, because it can become dangerous in itself. But if it's so far right wing that the other side has to be so far left wing, and they're polar opposites, and they've both got weapons of mass destruction, I know it's a dangerous situation.
A lot of people are thinking, with the current climate, with Donald Trump really kind of refusing to be presidential and actually step up on the world stage and make sensible decisions. Basically, the world had accepted for many years that America was just the world police. Now, in the Trump era, a lot of people are saying, well, Germany should try and take the stage, which I think they're actually fairly reluctant to do, somewhat due to their history with...
The irony of it is, though, that when you look at Germany, you think, well, actually, they seem to be one of the more sensible ones of the lot. But
at times, they have overstepped their mark in trying to control the world, let's just say that.
But maybe that's now, that history is for them a positive thing, because it's taught them humility. I mean, they don't parade their past. They don't celebrate their empirical kind of era like we tend to.
I think it was last year. There were marches in a place called Charlottesville in America, and this was by primarily white supremacists, a couple of Nazis thrown in there, and some just general idiots that want to burn stuff down. And they were protesting the removal of a statue of a Confederate general. I forget his name. Something Lee, I think.
Was it General Lee?
I don't know.
Because that's the name of one of the flags that they use in the South, isn't it? General Lee. It's the one with the General Lee flag. It was on the Dukes of Hazzard car. We spoke about Dukes of Hazzard earlier. It's like got stars in a cross formation. I think
that's
on a
just
blue,
generally known as the Confederate flag, which is actually wrong.
I think it's in some ways.
I believe the reason that the misconception happens is that was the flag that they used in battle, so that it didn't get confused with the Union flag, because the actual Confederate flag looks very similar to it.
Can we check that? But I'm pretty sure that's colloquially known as the General Lee.
I shall check. I'll just type in General Lee flag, so that I don't get weird FBI people looking at me researching Confederate flags.
As opposed to the non-weird FBI folk. Yeah.
General Lee flag. The car's name is a reference to American Civil War.
Oh, it was the
Robert
car.
E. Lee.
The General Lee was the car.
Robert E.
Dukes of Hazzard.
The flag was of Robert E. Lee. Yes. This statue...
It wasn't the flag. It was the car.
I'm not sure if it has been taken down, but it was due to be taken down at the time. People were protesting this because they were like, oh, it's our heritage and whatever the fuck they make up for it. Basically, they're like, oh, but we want to celebrate racism, and they needed excuses. And a lot of the argument was, well, you can't just erase history. And the argument that sensible people came back with was, in Germany, they don't have statues of Hitler up. They have history books and museums to remember that part of history. They're not proud of it. They're not proud of their Hitler heritage. Well, that sounds a little wrong. Sorry, Germans.
Hitler heritage. Yeah. Whatever you do, don't mention the war.
Yeah. Oh, that was I think it was an interview with Peter Capaldi, and he said that he was over in Germany and he was told not to mention the war. And the first thing he was asked was if the Daleks were based on Nazis. And it was like, fuck.
Exterminate. Sorry.
What?
That wasn't actually bad.
Yes, it was. Anyway.
Okay.
What else is there to talk about in America?
Where it came from and where is it going?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, which is interesting considering that a lot of the racists are Republicans. Not all Republicans are racist. The racists are mostly Republicans. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I suppose what that reveals is that the title of a party doesn't necessarily reflect its current
There
politics.
was a shift in what happened there because a lot of the people of colour were living in the South at that time. And at some point they migrated more to the cities, which Democrats were advocating for. So there was this slow shift towards Democrats representing the more liberal side and obviously people of colour, and the Republicans moving more towards more conservatives.
Yeah. I don't know if there is, but certainly the perception from outside of America is that they seem to have more of a racism problem than we do. Although we do have one, it's not nearly as pronounced.
Yeah.
I think it certainly seems to be acceptable to be a white racist in America.
Well, in certain crowds. You'll still get shit on social media for it, which is a good thing. But then you get shit on social media for all sorts of things, so they'll just justify it by going, well, someone criticised this person for a ridiculous thing, so it's fine. It's kind of stupid at times. I don't know what I'm talking about now. Do you have any input on that?
On what?
Yeah, right, you weren't even listening. This is great.
Racism.
Yeah. This is a sensitive topic.
What?
Racism. Because there's a...
I don't think we need to worry about saying anything because we're not racist. At least I don't think we are. See, that gets... When people say, I'm not racist, but...
Yeah, then you're just like, yes, you're racist. Okay. Bye.
I never say that, though. It's like...
Good.
What counts as racism? We're kind of getting away from US politics.
Discriminating... I'll actually go get the definition up because I don't want to make up my hair.
I've been accused of being racist when I took the mickey out of the Welsh before, and it's like I don't actually see them as a different race.
Racism definition. The definition of racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior.
See, I don't know what the definition of a race is because to me we're all part of the human race. Start.
That's a weird thing that started in the 1800s with a lot of papers saying, oh, well, there's actually a scientific difference between this race and that race. There's not. There's no actual proper difference. It's just based on where people live.
What is a race? It's like
we're all part of the same species.
I mean, I've heard of the Aryans, but I don't know. It seems a bit contrived. It's just like, you're just talking about blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, really.
Yeah, and that doesn't particularly denote...
Not sure that makes them a different race from that blonde-haired, brown-eyed person. Just like you're skating on thin ice there.
Yeah.
So what have we covered in US politics?
Racism, Russia, and
Guns?
we need another R. Racism, Russia, and rifles. We should maybe call this that. Gerrymandering.
Yeah,
Gerrymandering.
What is that again?
Right. That is when politicians who draw the borders for districts, and this is important in the Electoral College, will draw it so that it benefits their party, so that the most districts end up having more Republicans in them. So that there's images of this, there's a CPG Grey video on this, as per usual, and basically, if you imagine you have got a 5x5 grid of voters, 3/3 of them, and this is in lines, 3/3 of them...
You mean 3/5?
3/5.
Yeah.
3/3. 3/5 of them are Democrats. 2/5 of them are Republicans. But you can draw that so that there are 3 Republican districts.
Yeah.
With the same amount of voters in them. So that when you do that, you just group all the Democrats together.
Yeah. You can do a similar sort of thing with the first past the post here, though, like, to a certain extent, but maybe not.
The borders, the lines don't change that regularly here, though.
No, and they have to go through a process to approve that.
In America, the lines are actually drawn by the politicians that are elected, so they're going to draw lines that help them get elected.
Seems a little...
And it creates a sort of stale political climate.
At what point in the voting process do they draw those lines?
I don't know.
Because it's like, how does a particular state come to a decision about which party defines the districts?
Well, it's whoever's in control of that state.
In the previous...
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a huge conflict of interest because they're likely wanting to be re-elected. And it's interesting to see the best way to actually solve this, because if you get a bipartisan committee, they're going to want just their politicians to get elected. They're going to keep themselves in power, even if that means keeping their opponents in power too. They're just wanting to keep themselves in power, regardless of their party, for their career's sake. And the best way...
Seems a little corrupt.
Yeah, the best way to actually solve this is to have a committee that makes it so that it's as proportional as possible. There is a split line method, which basically does it on basis of mass, so that it's the shortest line that can be drawn to get that many people. That's the fairest method, but it results in some unfair, weird anomalies. But if you actually get a committee to do this so that it's as proportional as possible, then that's the best way.
Yeah, do you know, because your knowledge of politics is better than mine, do you know of any countries that already have proportional representation?
New Zealand. They have, I believe, something called mixed member proportional representation. Basically, all the constituencies, electorates, whatever it is, vote for their representative, and that makes up half the seats.
Right.
And the rest of them are taken from I think you get like 2 sheets for this. You have one that you vote for the candidate, and then you have one that you vote for your party. So then the rest of them are proportionally selected from a list, so that it's as close to the actual overall voter thing. And they're added until there's no seats left.
Yeah.
And that's generally the best way to get a proportional system. But then a lot of people say, well, we still want it to be completely locally represented.
Yeah.
So what I advocate is single transferable vote.
Right. Okay.
Which has multiple candidates being elected per constituency.
Yeah.
And it uses the sort of runoff voting of AV. And then as soon as they reach a certain quota, say each constituency has to have 3 people in it, 3 representatives, whatever it is, then they have to hit 33% of voters.
Yeah.
And that can be taken off of the bigger candidates. So say you have someone that has 60% of the vote, most of that will go to whatever their next choice is.
Yeah, we had one of those kind of things in one of the elections locally around here. I can't remember which one it was, but we had one of those where you put a first choice, second choice, third choice.
Yes, I'm not sure what it is in the rest of the UK, but I believe for Scottish council elections it is AV.
Yeah.
which is good, but it would be nice if they actually sorted that out for general elections.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen for a long time now because of, I believe it was 2010 that this referendum was held, and they're going to be like, well, there needs to be demand for another referendum.
Yeah.
For which there isn't because people don't particularly care.
There needs to be a lot of things, really, don't there?
Yeah, governments aren't generally that good at getting around to stuff. It's like in America, Washington, D.C., there's a state of Washington, which makes this confusing.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., they are allowed to send representatives, but those representatives don't vote on anything. And this is problematic because the population of Washington, D.C. is more than that of a few states.
Yeah.
Also, a weird situation with American overseas territories where Puerto Rico definitely should be a state. It's part of the USA. But it's kind of in that weird limbo state where it should technically be, but it's not. So Puerto Ricans can't vote.
Yeah.
They're technically citizens, but they can't vote.
You spend a certain amount of your life thinking that the world has an order that works, and then you begin to learn... No, they're just making this shit up.
Yeah.
And in a I suppose it makes sense that in a capitalist society, an oligarchy is the natural way of things.
It's interesting to see what Putin's doing with that. Russia is primarily an oligarchy, but he has been getting rid of a few of them to tighten his grip.
But it's strange that should happen, because you'd have thought that wouldn't really fit with the sort of left-wing kind of communism.
Well, after the fall of the USSR, no, of course it doesn't, because people wanted to get as far away from that as possible because of a lot of atrocities that were committed.
It was just communism in name only, really.
Well, at the time of the USSR, it was communism, but it quickly became just oligarchy after that.
Yeah.
And then Putin rose to power, and he was a former KGB spy. So in his eyes, all those countries that were given independence are Russian land. He's trying to take them back.
Yeah.
Which is why he annexed Crimea and I believe Chechnya.
Europe's not going to like that.
Europe's not going to like that, but
Europe doesn't like
there's
that.
a huge amount of instability in Europe because of Brexit right now, which is the worst possible time, and I'm wondering if that's because he actually instigated that at this time to cause a massive confusion in Britain so that they wouldn't really know whether or not they wanted to support Europe in a war against Russia.
Yeah.
Because by the looks of it, the reason why he's doing
I don't think the Cold War ever ended. I just think Russia went dark.
Well, it's not between America and Russia anymore. It's between Russia and Europe.
Yeah, but it's kind of, yeah.
And it heated up a few times when you annexed fucking Crimea.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing because I was, what age would have I been then? I was 10 when that happened, I believe.
Really?
Yes.
Was it that long ago? God, I'm getting old.
2014, I think.
You weren't 10 in 2014?
That was 4 years ago.
I suppose you were for summer of 2014. First half of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know the specific dates, but I was 10 or 11. Generally not that politically aware. Although more politically aware than a fair few people. Yeah. So that was a weird situation. I didn't really understand it at the time, but now it seems quite scary what they're attempting to do. And the reason why
if it wasn't real, it'd be a really entertaining soap opera.
Created the bridge with Donald Trump to Russia so that he likely won't help out in that war. So I think a war with Europe and Russia is somewhat in the near future.
Yeah, not good.
Scary thought.
But wasn't that one of the main original reasons behind the referendum for Brexit being called? Because they were against the idea of a European army.
I didn't know about this until way after, so it obviously wasn't that public. Either that or I'm in different news spheres. Okay, well, we should probably put an end to this
What's next
shambles.
time?
I shall look.
Don't tell them.
No, because we have to bring them in and tease them for the next show.
Okay, well, maybe...
We're not going to give spoilers, of course, but, the future.
Oh, that's a good one.
The future.
Yeah, but it'll be the present when we do it.
Yeah.
And it'll be the past when they hear it.
Yeah. I do like how you can tell what line of thinking I was going on because the next one after that is history. So it's like, oh, we did the future and then we're doing the past. Spoilers. Anyway.
Anyway.
Boop. I have been Firebolt.
And I'm still the Orbiter.
And this has been Breaking Bollocks, episode 7.
US politics.
Thanks for watching. We'd really appreciate it if you support us on various things, obviously subscribing on YouTube, Twitch, following us on Twitter or Facebook. We have a Discord server that you can join and talk to us and other people, and a website where you can check out blog posts.
And obviously this isn't free for us to run, so if you'd like to support us financially, we have a Patreon page where you can donate monthly and get subscriber rewards. We also have a Stream Elements tipping page where you can make one-off donations. The links are all in the description.
Farewell.
See you next time.
Blue-dee-doo-doo, blue-dee-doo-doo. They're all controlled by space lizards. Space Nazis are real.